Going to hit refresh over here. Okay, we are just going to go live because I believe we're good. Okay. Hey, everybody, Regina and I here, and welcome to Coffee with Regina. And I have my special guest with me today. It's Noemi Beres. All right,
It's
I got it right.
perfect. Yeah, you got it right.
Welcome, Noemi. And I want to tell you a little bit about Noemi. She is the dynamic co-owner of Podcast Connections, a premier podcast booking agency that empowers entrepreneurs and business owners to thrive through strategic connections and knowledge sharing. With a passion for fostering meaningful relationships, she specializes in linking her clients to top quality podcast platforms, enabling them to amplify their voices and expand their reach. How cool is that? Because that's what we all need. We all need to connect to more people and build our businesses. Naomi, no, Amy. I'm gonna mess this up. I know multiple times. This is why we have a very casual chat here on Coffee with Regina, and it is no Amy for anybody who connects with her later. Thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And where are you coming from? Where do you live?
I live in Cyprus, Europe, in the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, in just the eastern corner of the Mediterranean. But I was born and raised in Hungary, so in Central Europe.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so I am doing a couple things. For all of my Coffee with Regina folks who come and join us live and join us on LinkedIn and join us on YouTube and all over the place and even hit the replays, understand that Noemi is my guinea pig today because, as you know, on April 22nd, Facebook took out the ability to do live streams on their platform. And there's a little workaround, and that's what we're testing out today. So if you are on Facebook and you're putting any comments in, understand that I can't see your comments right now, and I will get back to you afterwards, and so will Noemi because she's out in our group as well. Today, we want to talk about, I really was so excited to have Noemi on here because we want to talk about podcasts and why podcasts are so important to your business. Noemi, why do I even care about podcasts?
It's a great marketing strategy. It's a great long-term marketing strategy. So you need it for your business, obviously. You need it, you need to be on LinkedIn, you need to be on Instagram, Facebook, and you also need to do some interviews to get your name out there and build your brand and authority. So, yeah.
So if I'm thinking about podcasts and, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Some of them are just audio. Some of them are, video. There's all different kinds of podcasts. And it's my understanding, and I may be way off with this number, but I think there's like 1.5 million or more podcasts out there.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's about, I think it's even more than 3 million or something like that, but not all of them are active. So I would say, yeah, I read some kind of study about it recently, and I don't know, it's like a huge percentage of them are not like live anymore. I mean, some people, they just think, oh, let's start a podcast. It's such a great idea. But then, it needs consistency, persistency to keep up and to host a podcast. And that takes a lot of energy, money, and time. And many people, they just give it up usually after the 7th, 10th episode. That's the magic number. So
Gotcha. So when you think about all the podcasts, because there's so many out there, and we talk about, finding our ideal audience, with that many podcasts out there, if I'm going out to look for a podcast, how do I actually find my audience through those millions of podcasters that are out there? I mean, how would I even begin to connect?
I mean, first of all, you have to figure out your niche and which niche you are in. I mean, that's a really important question. And also, who's your ideal client, or who's your ideal people you want to get in touch with, or maybe sell your service. I mean, that's a great starting point. So you have to figure that out before you start doing podcast guesting. And I'm not saying that like podcast guesting is all about selling your service, or it's about sharing your knowledge, about sharing your story. But obviously, you at the end of the day, you want to share your your service or anything. You want to serve people, and that's why you have to figure out what kind of niche you are in. So there are a lot of niches, a lot of different podcasts out there, and you have to figure out that first. And when you go on iTunes, obviously you can just try with one podcast, and the one that probably is closest to you, or closest to your business, or closest to your message or your vibe. And then once you get there, it will give you so many other options you can choose from. So you can really go down in a rabbit hole with all those podcasts. But it's a good thing to make a list, like make a worksheet, Google worksheet or something, that so you can start to collect those podcasts that you are interested in. And then once you have, let's say about like 10, 20 podcasts, try to get, the name of the podcast host. Obviously that's there, so that's not a big thing. The biggest thing is to find their email address, or to find them on LinkedIn. But you can do that easily. And for example, if you visit Listen Notes, or there are other platforms out there where you can actually find people's email addresses. And I'm not saying this is whole legit, so it's nothing fishy about it. Those email addresses are out there. Or you can connect with them on LinkedIn. Maybe, and sometimes that's the easiest option. You just type their name in. Usually there's a picture on the podcast. It's like, okay, that's the same person. And then, and you can start a conversation and reach out to people and reach out to those hosts. I mean, we are all human. We can start a conversation, and you don't have to be pushy. You just want to start maybe a chat, just jump on a quick Zoom call or something and start a conversation. And then you figure it out. If it's the right fit for you or not.
So when it comes to the podcasts, I know a few years ago I had signed up for the free accounts on, I think it was Podmatch and Matchmaker FM, and I haven't been on the platforms in ages, so my information is probably way out of date. I'm not even sure if those still exist and if people find people that way. My question though is, do you need, like, if you're a speaker, you need just speaker one sheet. Do you need like a podcast one sheet that tells people what you do?
Yes, you do. Actually, the Podmatch is still exists. I mean, I'm on it too. Just looking for great podcasts. It's working. I'm not a huge fan of it, but that's my own opinion. But you can still find, there are a lot of podcasters use it. And yes, to answer your question, yes, you need a podcast guest one sheet. And it's very similar to a speaker one sheet. You just have to emphasize more what kind of interviews you had before. Maybe a couple of examples. And it's a PDF file, so it's clickable. So you can link your previous interviews to that sheet, and then people can find you. That's a good starting point. And the rest of the bio, the rest of the podcast guest bio is usually the same as a speaker bio. Obviously, your picture has to be on it. Contact details, important, so people can reach out to you. And what we do with the podcast guesting bio is that we also include topics and talking points. Just a major one. I'm not talking about like you don't have to write a novel or anything like that, but the major topics and talking points you cover, excuse me, and also like a short bio that you want to include, and doesn't have to be long. Just something like sweet and short, so people can read it. And obviously, as I mentioned, just a couple of previous interviews and all your social media links so people can find you. Maybe your email if you want to, or if you want to, share your mobile number, that's also optional, and website, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that, I mean, it sounds fairly easy to get it all set up. It sounds really super time consuming though, to actually go find all the podcasts.
It is indeed. Yeah, it takes a lot of time and a lot of research to find the right ones, for sure.
So you mentioned LinkedIn a couple times, and So do a lot of these podcast hosters hang out on LinkedIn? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, they are. I mean, we made a lot of business out of LinkedIn for sure. I mean, it's really a good platform. I'm always there, and even if people reach out to me, even if they are potential clients or they are podcast hosts, it's a professional space, so everyone is there, and it's really easy to connect with people if you're genuine. And what I can suggest to people, I think it really helps, that get verified on LinkedIn. I think it's really important, but at least people can see that you're legit. And I keep telling to my friends, like, get verified, because you are not just someone who's just reaching out and they don't even know who you are. And especially for me, I mean, I'm in Europe, it's strange country, Cyprus. So it's like I'm a real person behind the business. I think that's important when you reach out to someone. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, for those of you who don't know what LinkedIn Verified is, it's that little check mark next to your name, that little green check mark that says you are who you are. Because in this day and age, yeah, that's absolutely true. There's so many, there's so many bots and the fake profiles and all the stuff that's out there. You want to make sure that you're dealing with a real person. So that makes perfect sense to me. And I'm verified on LinkedIn too, and it was really super simple. You just click the button and say, "Yep, verify me." You follow the prompts, and there you go. You're all verified. It's all good to go.
Yeah,
So
it took a couple of seconds. That was it.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So now all right, so I found a podcast. I'm really excited, and I'm going to jump on this podcast. And I've never really been on a podcast before. How do I become a really good podcast guest?
Yes, that's a good question. And yeah, a very important one. First of all, you have to come prepared. Don't wing it, especially not at the beginning. I never wing it. And I've been doing guesting now. I think this is my third year that I'm doing podcast guesting. And you really need to get prepared. Be clear about your topics, about your talking points that you want to share with the audience. And, sometimes the host will send you maybe a list of questions that they want you to answer, or they ask you to send them like 5-6 questions, what you want to talk about. I think that's really important to be clear about. If you are starting out and you have so many topics and talking points, maybe just get in touch with the host before the interview and check it out, and just make sure that what you want to talk about and what you want to cover. Because some hosts love free flow conversations, so they can go anywhere, they can do whatever they want during that call. But especially when you're starting out, sometimes you just need that kind of support from the host. It's like, yes, I know what I'm going to talk about, and you'll be prepared. And I think that's important. And also part of that you always have to share some part of your story. And that story shouldn't be very long. So it's not like a 20-minute monologue about your life and your business. I try to condense it. I mean, that's really important. And practice that. There are great ways to do that now in the world, like at the age of ChatGPT. So try to figure out a couple of options how to condense your story, because you just can't take away all the time from the host and just keep talking about yourself like for 20 minutes. I think it's not fair. And also, when you are on the podcast, try to speak clearly and with enthusiasm. That's also important. And yeah, it's a friendly conversation like we're having right now. It's not, don't be stiff or don't be too formal, because this is just a conversation between two people. Yeah, so that's also important.
So when you were saying all that, I was like, okay, so am I being a good podcast host? I've been on a bunch of podcasts. I'll tell you though, when I went on my first podcast, my very first one, a bunch of years ago, never having done it before, I was pretty nervous as a first time guest. And what I found was really super helpful is the podcast I happened to be on was kind of like this. It was, we say on Coffee with Regina, come and join us for a cup and a chat with purpose. It's a casual conversation. We just let it flow. Yes, like you said, we come up with, here's what we want to talk about. We want to bring this stuff up because we want to add value. At the same time, it's a casual conversation. And because it was such a casual conversation in my very first podcast, it made it so easy for me and it made me relax. So I'm thinking that maybe a good tip would be, if you've never been on a podcast before and you're looking for podcasts, look for something that is a little laid back, like this kind of thing,
Yeah.
where they're not going, okay, I need a topic, I need this, and we're going to go like this, we're going to go like this. I've been on podcasts where they've it was actually kind of funny. It was like, okay, you have 15 minutes to talk about this, and then we put a commercial up, and then you have another 15 minutes, you're going to talk about this, and then we have another commercial, and then you have another 15 minutes, and then we're done. And I was just like, okay, I'll get this all structured. It's all good. If that had been my first podcast, I probably would have totally freaked out and never done another podcast again ever, because I didn't know any better. So
exactly.
If you're a new podcast guest, do you have some advice?
What we do, like with Podcast Connections at our company, if you're very inexperienced, we try to schedule a mock interview with our clients. And we also have a strategy call when we go through all the topics, all the talking points, your bio, everything. And I think that really helps people, and especially the mock interview. We did that. We had that before, and it helped. And I got that feedback from different clients. Like, yes, it really helped me to figure out, and I have more self-esteem now to get on shows because we recorded it. The client could watch it back, and it's like, yes, I like it. I like the way I do things. So now I can go live. Now I can do my thing on podcast. So I think that's really important. Also, please start with the smaller podcast. Don't aim for the ones with like thousands of episodes and 400 reviews, because they are very professional, and they might be very helpful. But just start with the small gigs. It's like I always compare this to, like, I love music and I'm a music nerd, and I love compare that to different groups or bands. You go to those pops, do those small pop gigs and everything, then you can go to have that big concert. And you can't just jump in onto those big podcasts. You need to have that kind of experience to get on bigger shows, and you need to do your job. But some people just come to us and they tell us, like, I want to be on this and that show. And so how many interviews did you have? Like one? Okay, so we need a couple of more under your belt. Then we can go out and approach those. Because sometimes podcast hosts will ask you for a sample interview or something like that, and you don't have one. They're a bit like cautious with you, and they want to have more experienced guests on their show. So yeah, try with the smaller shows because they're happy to accept you, and then you can just move forward to the middle-sized one and the bigger one later on. Just follow the steps, like take small steps. I think that's important.
Yeah, that is great advice. And I mean, it actually helps too with those folks that have never been on a podcast before, to get your feet wet and just kind of start feeling more comfortable on podcasts. Because, especially if it's conversational and the podcast host asks you a question, you don't want to be like, and get stuck. I mean, because nobody wants that on a podcast, and they want the conversation to keep flowing. And I really love what Keith put in the comments here. He put a hashtag conversations that matter. That's it. I mean, that's what a podcast is. It's a conversation that adds some value to the audience that's listening to it. And so the more value you can add, the better. At the same time, this is kind of like a statement and a question for you. It's like, you don't want to give too much information because you don't want to overwhelm people with, kind of like just a brain dump of info on them. You want to give them some action steps in a podcast. Well, it depends on the podcast, right?
Right.
And you want to give them something to walk away with. Why am I listening to this podcast? What am I getting out of it? Why am I going to spend a half an hour with you? I want to know that I'm getting some value for this. It's either going to be, you're brightening my day. It's a humorous podcast and you're making me feel good for the rest of the day, or you're providing some training or some other kind of value. There's all kinds of different podcasts out there. So with all the ones, because I know you've seen thousands out there. What do you think about that as far as like all the different types and adding that value, those conversations that matter?
Yes, you have to add value. Yes, that's 100% true. And you have to share knowledge. You have to be authentic. You have to show your real self. You have to be open and vulnerable. in order to people to get you and to feel you and to believe in you, because there are so many fakeness in the world right now. And if people sense some kind of authenticity when they talk to you and when they listen to you, they will be attracted to you and to your business. And first they will be attracted to you as a person and not to your business. So if you are very uptight or whatever, you're a very like self-assured person on the show and you don't smile, or they won't even go near your business. So they have to like you first, I think, as a person. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean that makes like perfect sense. And you said something that's really key: authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you go on, you want to be showing them who you are. I mean,
Yeah.
when I go on to Coffee with Regina, any of my tips, all the other stuff that I do, I mean, they get me. I mean, it's pretty raw. It's good. It's good information. I provide a lot of value. People like the value. Not everybody is probably right for me though, because I just say it like it is. And so, and so you want to make sure, I think, that your audience is the right audience
Yeah.
that resonates with you.
Absolutely.
So tell me again, and I'm putting your information, I'm looking up your information in here so I can get you on the screen. And if somebody was going to do some work with you, I mean, what is it that you do for people? I mean, we talked about how hard it is to go
Yes.
through those millions and millions of podcasts that are out there. So tell us all what you do.
Yeah, the most important thing is that we help them to save them time, energy, and money. And we provide them with consistency, because that's the problem when it comes to podcast guesting. That, okay, you sent out maybe 10 emails to 10 different podcast hosts and they didn't reply back. It can happen. And so that you were discouraged and, oh, I'm not doing this. This is not working. This is not the right marketing strategy for me. So then, when we come into the picture, first we take all those no's from other people, because it's not good for your ego when you get out there, you reach out to people and you tell them, it's like, no, sorry, we don't want you to be on this show, or maybe this topic was covered like 2 weeks ago, and we just don't want you. And so we take the no's. That's a big thing. And we providing people with consistency, and we save you time, because most of us are always lack of time. Then also that you reach more people, because the podcast booking agencies, and I'm not just talking about myself or ourselves, but other podcast booking agencies, they do have a huge network of podcasts they are already in touch with. And when we reach out to these podcasts, like, hey, we're already in touch, like we're working together for 3 years, I can just send people, and they know, they trust me. So the people I'm sending to them, obviously they accept them, I would say 99% of the time, because they trust me and they trust my expertise and knowledge, because of that. And also I think sometimes you look maybe a bit like more professional when you have an agent, and it's like, oh, my agent reach out to you or whatever. So it's like a bit, bit more professional. I don't want to sound snobbish or anything like that. Like, I need to have an agent, but it's just easier. It's just easier because someone represents you. And we handle all the details. That's also key, because there's so much forms. There's so many forms to fill out. All these emails back and forth sometimes with the host. Not everyone has a calendar. They're just sending out different dates and times. So it's really, really time consuming. So obviously we have a team, and we organize everything for our clients. So it's a done for you service what we provide. And we save you a lot of time. So I think that's the most important part.
And I did put your website, it's on the screen here for folks to check it out. You just said something there that, I don't know, maybe it's me. I just didn't put two and two together. And I was like, yeah, you're a podcast agent. And, I talked to and worked with speaker agents in the past. So obviously speaker agents are a thing. And I never really thought about podcast agents, but that's what you are. You're a podcast agent. You basically hook people up. I never really called it that. I don't know what I would have called you before, but now you're my podcast agent.
So, it's a matchmaking service, basically, in the podcasting world. Yeah.
So if folks want to connect with you, I know you have podcastconnections.co, which is on the screen here. And also, you said, you're out on LinkedIn. So I want to put your LinkedIn information out here too, so folks can hook up with you. when it comes to like the podcast connections, you're doing all the connections. Now, if I'm coming to you and I'm like brand new, like I said, I've been on, I don't even know how many podcasts at this point. So I have like my little sheet that I send out with information. If I'm new and I'm like, Noemi, I don't even know where to start. Do you help them with creating that sheet and creating their podcast persona?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we have a 60-minute strategy call. When someone signs up with us, they have a strategy call or coaching session. You can call that too, and we go through or everything about them. We brainstorm. Sometimes even we give them online marketing ideas, because we were in the online marketing field for 17 years, and so that really helps. Maybe just to help them to get their message out there the right way, and also to talk about their topics and talking points, because some people just give us too general topics, like somebody in e-commerce, and it's like all you have to know about email marketing. It's like, yeah, that's very cool, but we need some originality and uniqueness about your topic, or you don't stand out of the crowd. There are so many podcast guests right now out in the world, and they're all looking for podcasts. And actually I think there was some kind of data, I read it somewhere, that like for every single podcast guest space there are like 10 people who applies for. So it's like they just do it constantly. So you have to stand out. Your message has to be unique. So we help them to get that message out there, and those topics and talking points like catchy and the ones that really attract the host as well. And also we go through their bios. That's also important, because some people give us bios that are really, really long, and they might be a little bit of boring, no offense, but they are. So you have to spice it up. You have to make it like sweet and short, and it doesn't have to be like 4 paragraphs of bio, because no one ever will read that or go through that. And that can be a problem, because if you're starting out and you're sending out all those bios, like, people will stop after 2 sentences, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is too long, I'm not going to go into that. And we also have them to create that one sheet, the podcast guesting one sheet. That's also key. And like we help them with anything that we can, and to prepare them for be a better guest, and also organize a mock interview if it's needed. So yeah, we go above and beyond just to help them. And I know we work with very established keynote speakers, and they are absolutely fine, but the podcast guesting world and being in this, like on this virtual stage, is a little bit different than being a keynote speaker, because you have to really like show the real you, and like authenticity again. You're not like someone who's just standing on a stage, and that's completely different vibe, and just having like a conversation, and you can just take it easy and talk about something professionally but still casually.
Yeah, I love that. This has been phenomenal information, because my audience is mostly coaches and consultants and other business owners who all need to connect with more people. And I'm a firm believer in podcasts myself, as far as I'm always talking to my clients about reaching out and getting in touch with other people's audiences. And that's what podcasting is all about. It's getting in front of other people's audiences. And I really like your strategy of, start small, start with, don't go targeting those podcast hosts that have the millions and millions of views and all that stuff, because you're probably going to crash and burn on their podcast, unless you're really good. I mean, I don't know, if you're a really good speaker, and you've always been a good speaker, you might be fine with that. If you've never been on a podcast before and you're like, well, I want to get in front of other people's audiences, a little bit nervous about it, well, then don't go on one of those. Start small and work your way up, and perfect your information. I'm looking at Keith. Keith is posting in, have a masterclass. Yeah, we have a masterclass. So yes, a masterclass on podcast guesting and looking for podcasts and podcast hosting. That would be fabulous. And we are just about out of time. So I want to make sure that everybody has your contact information and all of these tips, tons of golden nuggets in this conversation and in our today's chat. I mean, I always say it's a cup and a chat with purpose, right? So it's golden nuggets, lots of value. Is there any last, golden nugget you want to toss out there?
I think there are lots of them. It's hard to pick one, but never forget to follow up with the host and just to send a thank you note when you had your interview. Because some people think that, like, okay, I had my interview and I just let's get to the next one and just rinse and repeat. But you never know what kind of relationship you can build with the host. You can be each other's masterclass or each yeah masterclass and each other private Facebook groups or anything. Like it just is just beginning of a conversation, and you can even make business together. The host can hire you. You can organize a post chat. This is like getting more and more common now. Like people just getting on a post interview chat after they had their interview. So how we can serve each other, how we can help each other. I think that's really important because it's all about helping and serving other people and sharing your knowledge with them. So the follow up, the thing, just saying thank you, it's important.
That is huge, and that is a great last golden nugget to throw into this conversation, because I think that's one of the things that people miss is that follow up. And that's what they say, the follow up, the fortune is in the follow up, right?
Yeah, right.
So, all right, thank you so much, Noemi, for being here. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. And for all of you watching or catching the replay, come and check us out. Check out Noemi's information. She is absolutely amazing. I know I'm going to be chatting with her because I'm looking to get on some more podcasts, and I think she is the person to go to. So I know she's the person to go to. So I will see you all next time. We'll see you all next time on Coffee with Regina. Bye for now.